to Corporate Cafecito,
a Latin and business podcast where we share insights and strategies to help entrepreneurs and professionals thrive.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. Yo soy Nayeli Suarez Gas.
Y yo soy Carlos Butler Vale.
Today we're going to talk about something that is probably weighing heavily on so many people's minds, and that is the job hunt.
Yeah, why does it feel so damn hard these
Because
days?
it's really hard these days.
It is.
It's so hard. I mean, one, we've had so many jobs eliminated.
Yes.
We see so many, like every time I looked on LinkedIn, I see so many people saying ready to work, open to work, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And it just feels like the search is lasting exponentially longer than it's ever lasted before.
And it's not just certain industries. I mean,
It's everybody.
It's hitting everybody. I mean, I remember when I worked
I feel
in
like
tech,
teachers and nurses probably are
maybe,
okay.
Yeah, but even teachers and nurses, I mean, in some cases, what you're seeing is a lot of teachers and nurses deciding to opt out.
Yeah.
And going to a completely different, profession. And so
Yeah.
now they're having to sort of reshift, and reshuffle. But, the reality is that there's been so much naivety that has been happening lately
So
that I
much.
think makes it really difficult, not to mention the fact that the latest jobs numbers just came out and there was $100,000 overall net job loss.
100,000 person.
100,000 person, yes.
Job loss,
Job
yeah.
loss, right. And, so you add that to the fact that, overall, for the most part, I would say, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think, we're starting off the year already. We're only in March. We're starting to see that that's gone down. Some of that could be, post-holiday hiring, but for the most part, you would see, I think,
There
by
wasn't
March,
that
you
much
see a little
holiday
bit- yeah,
hiring.
Exactly, right? But then you talk about things like, and you've seen it many times. You go on LinkedIn and you see the stats, and there's a role that has been open for one day, and it literally says there's 365 people that have already applied for this job, right? So that's happening. In addition
It
to
is.
that, you've got recruiters who are either overburdened or, quite frankly, I will say there's a little bit of apathy, unfortunately, that's sort of growing, from their perspective too. And so they're ghosting candidates. So now you're going through spending all this time trying to specifically create a resume and a cover letter for that role, and you're lucky if you even hear back. Or in some cases, what happens is AI is leveraged, and before a human even sees your application, you might be getting a notification that you're not being moved forward with, right? And then, not to mention, there's internal, because of the rifts and a lot of the layoffs that have been happening, or just simply not approving new headcount. So let's
Right.
say, even if you're not laying off, as new needs start to become apparent in the business, they're just not hiring new people. So now more folks are having to take on some of those roles. But within that, what we're also seeing is a lot of internal candidates are actually being preferred versus external candidates for a number of reasons. But if any of those things have happened to you, then you're definitely in the right place, and we completely understand. And, we think this is an important topic because at the end of the day, there's a lot going on, and you need to figure out how you're going to stay sane throughout this process.
Yeah, and it's a tough process because it's your livelihood.
Yeah.
It is how you feed your family, it's how you pay your mortgage, it's how you pay your rent, it's how you are able to afford the things you need to survive. And so, oftentimes we attach our identity to our job, right? Like I am in
Yeah.
sales, or I am, a consultant, etc. So we show up, and oftentimes how we introduce ourselves is based off of our profession,
absolutely.
right?
Is that a uniquely an American thing?
Yes.
Is
No,
it?
actually,
No?
no.
Okay.
In Mexico, you lead with your title too. I don't know about other Latin American countries, but I know in Mexico, if you
Like
are
licenciado o maestra o lo que sea.
or
Okay.
ingeniero or
Okay.
whatever. So that part, it takes a lot getting
But
rewiring.
that's titles, right?
It is
I
titles,
mean,
which is, you're right. If
Yeah.
that's how you're starting your conversation, then
yeah.
that's how you're
But
identifying
I
yourself.
agree with you. I
Yeah.
think that's actually very interesting. So keep going.
So I for so many of us, myself included, we do tie what we do with our identity because it's what's provided. It's what we do for the majority of the week. And so to lose your job is very hard. I remember the first time I was laid off, I was 27 years old. and you couldn't tell me I was not amazing. And I
You
was,
were.
and I got let go 6 months into a job.
Oh wow.
And the most horrible part is my mom and my aunts worked there, my padrino worked there,
Mm,
and I was hired in and I was the first one to be in an office. So it
mm,
was a really big deal. And then 6 months later, they're like, we don't need you. And, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, I remember I cried and I just felt like it was such a blow to my self
yeah.
esteem. It was so hard, like, to just understand like why they would let me go.
Yeah.
And I would tell you like my mom probably cried harder than me. And it took me a little bit. It shook me. It shook me a lot.
There's no way to not take it personally. I mean, I think that's a bottom line,
Yeah.
right? I mean, even if you are told on your way out the door that you're the most amazing person
You're like, then
and
why didn't
that
you save
right and that
me?
you are going to be fine and that they're
Yeah.
rooting for you,
It's still
it's
a blow
still
to
a
the
blow
ego.
to the
It's still a
ego.
blow
Yeah.
to your self-esteem. It is really hard. And I will say this. Once you make it past the first time, it's like a heartbreak,
Hmm.
right? The first time they break your heart, it hurts so much. The second time, you're like, okay, I've had my heart broken before. I'm going to be okay. Let me go back and do my heartbreak routine, right? Let
Hmm.
me go back and do my routine of when I get riffed.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I like that. You're like my heartbreak routine.
yeah. It's like, order Chinese food, watch rom-coms and
Yeah.
cry.
Yeah.
But like, I think that it becomes really important of how you recover or react
Yeah.
from that separation.
I don't disagree. I mean, I think about when I had just graduated with my bachelor's degree, and it was right in the middle of the recession, the 2008, 2009 recession. And I was literally with a bachelor's degree from a very great school, and I was trying to apply for fast food jobs, because, and I also knew people that were in their 50s and 60s who had gotten laid off, who were trying everything possible, suddenly applying for jobs to become postal workers, or I mean I had seen it all, right? And I think about what that job market was like before. I don't It's hard for me to gauge right now if now feels harder than it did, but what I will say that does feel different is the AI component to this, because I think there's a certain expectation of perfection as you're applying to roles, because now people can basically sort of like, you know,
Yeah. This
shift
one
and
this
mold.
feels different. I would
Yeah.
say the AI, but think about it like the invention of the computer
Yeah.
and how many typists it took out of the
Oh yeah,
workforce.
absolutely.
The
From
internet.
typewriters. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, the internet and
Yeah.
the invention of email, how
Yeah.
much that decreased the postal office and just the need for couriers, et cetera. And, I think about like, is this our new thing we need to survive?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I do wonder if, I won't name which company, but there was a very well-known company who had laid off a lot of people and had stopped hiring early career talent, and then realized that that wasn't going to be sustainable, because a lot of people on the back end were actually getting ready to retire,
And you need
and they needed
people.
people coming on
Yeah.
the inside. So at first they were like, well, we're just going to replace these jobs with AI. But they realized that there's a human to human sort of information exchange that needed to happen that just wasn't happening.
Right.
And so, but that's, I think, a good segue into sort of a little bit more into why it is that it feels so hard right now. We started talking about this a little bit, but the fact is that most companies are just operating lean right now. I think they're finding it really
We did.
difficult from a
Yeah.
business planning perspective to figure out like what's going to happen with tariffs, what's going to happen with this, what's going to happen with that. I mean, there was just a Supreme Court ruling that made the tariffs illegal, but we don't know, what's going to happen with all that money, or when the other shoe is going to drop, right? So, um, the cost of goods is increasing.
Well, we also did, when you go back to we did the quiet quitting, right? That's when
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had the luxury of saying like, nope, that's not my responsibility. 9 to 5, I'm out of here.
Yep.
Then we had the quiet firing,
Mm-hmm.
which is where you just started excluding people from meetings and things like that and
Yep.
hoping they would go away.
Yep.
But then there was the quiet hiring, which is I'm not going to fill this role, I'm going to divide this role
Yes.
across other people.
Yep.
And so as they do that and not backfill roles and start exiting people, you have this talent pool that has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And especially if you have not been a strong networker, or if you are in an industry where it's a very close knit group, right? Chances are it's hard to think about your skills as transferable. It's hard to be
Yeah.
like, how do I parlay this into something else? And in that
Especially if
sense,
you've been riffed. I mean, like
yeah,
that makes it even harder because now you're dealing with the emotional aspect of it,
and the
right?
financial,
This is not exactly, this
yeah.
isn't just like, oh, I've got a job and then I'm going to go just find another
No, you're like,
job.
what
Like,
can I
it's like, yeah,
do? And I
exactly.
think,
How do I
in
survive?
yeah, in that aspect, I think AI does a really good job of helping you kind of
Sure.
go through, and
It's a good point.
you could even be like, what are my skills?
Right.
How can you assess my talent? Like, what jobs could someone with this skill set do?
Right.
And so, I encourage people to use AI in that way of like, these are my skill sets. This is what I can do. These are the jobs that are available. I'll even say like, what jobs are open right now?
Right.
Where can I
Exactly.
apply?
Yeah.
And things like that. I also think there's the opportunity of like looking up when, like if you're on LinkedIn and they
Mm-hmm.
say like, here is the person in charge of recruiting. I'm like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
that company really needs to hire because they're putting the
The
recruiter
recruiter out
out
there.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, because of the volume, it's probably impossible. So it's almost feels like a chicken or the egg type situation,
Hmm.
which again is part of what makes it feel really hard right now for
So
people.
much.
The other thing is approvals are taking significantly longer because businesses aren't able to do as much business planning, I would say, or as consistent business planning. And so, whereas in the past, like, when everything was good, you'd be like, oh, hey, I need to increase the headcount for this, blah, blah, so on and so forth. Like, you know, sure, there's a due diligence aspect of it, but you weren't getting the same levels of approvals that were needed. I remember a company that I was with, not, in the past, like an SVP, an EVP actually needed to sign on for any new headcount that was
Hmm.
being approved, right? And so, and it wasn't just headcount, but it was spending or anything like that. But can you think about just how many layers it is that you have to go through just to get that,
You know
just to
what?
get to that
I will
point?
say this, Carlos, that's always been my experience. So anytime we had a head count, we had to go pretty high up the rankings, like SVP.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's always been my experience. And so that part doesn't feel weird to me.
For me, it was typically VP,
Mm.
maybe SVP, but EVP was like, I was like, oh, this is a new layer, right? It's
Yeah.
very interesting. I mean, because there really weren't that many EVPs to begin with, and so, but the reality is then because that cycle takes a lot longer,
Mhm.
that means that if you're someone who's open to work, you could potentially be open to work for significantly longer
Well,
because,
one of the metrics they say is that it takes 1 month for every 10,000 you make.
yeah,
So, anyone making six figures, it's at least you're looking at about a year to
yeah.
replace that income.
Yeah, it's yes, it's a
Yeah.
rough it's rough out there. Um, Obviously companies are being extremely selective,
Yeah.
when it comes to this stuff. And one of the things that you and I had talked about is that there's just generally a premium that's associated with bringing talent in from the outside, anywhere between 20 to 30%. And so for a long time,
Mhm.
companies were, and this is where my background in talent acquisition I think is helpful, is um, for a long time, companies were just not worried. And so that they were just bringing a lot of talent externally, and while also ideally doing professional development for talent
Mhm.
internally when we're looking at bench, right? Or we're
Right.
looking at
And we
succession.
had bench strength.
Well,
We talked about bench strength every year.
right. And that's not necessarily really happening as much
Mhm.
anymore. Certainly, you're not getting the same level of robust discussions,
Right.
but when it comes to dollars and cents, I think even if you don't necessarily feel like you're getting everything you need from an internal candidate, if there is a budget constraint that you just simply cannot manage around, you're sort of, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Right.
And I think it makes it challenging because for most part, roughly maybe 5, 10 years ago, organizations said, okay, we're going to start posting jobs externally as well, even if we have someone internally that we're going to hire, whatever. And so you, the
Wasn't
job
that was that a
seeker,
legal requirement?
I think it was a legal
I think so
requirement. I
too.
think for the state of Illinois, like it depends. Like different states had, certain requirements, but from an affirmative action perspective,
Mhm.
because a lot of companies didn't necessarily have the diversity internally, they had to at least go externally, even if you didn't hire someone
Yeah.
externally. But you had to
Okay. Okay, that
demonstrate
makes
that you were, yeah.
sense.
But you have to
Okay.
demonstrate, right? I don't know what they are, these days, but I think it's still a fairly common practice, right? And so you are out there thinking, yes, let me dedicate this time, let me put this together. You apply, and then nothing happens, right? And so that is something that I'm hearing consistently from people too.
Well, you have to treat your job search like a job. You have to structure it as like,
Yeah,
I'm going to do this. How long would this project take me
yeah,
if I was doing it? And, I think it's really important to set up like, here's my criteria, here's what I want, here's the like who I've talked to, here's who I've sent emails to, here is the person in my network that can connect me to that company.
right.
Here are like I treat it I've had this notebook since 2000, maybe 2000, and I did all my job searches in that notepad.
Oh, wow.
And I at my first page is like, what am I looking for?
Good for
And
you.
it has not changed in the same sense, right? It's like, this is what I want. I want a company, I want culture, compensation, and challenge. And as I went through, all my notes for every job I've interviewed for are in there.
Yeah.
Like what the company does, what I liked about them, my concerns. And it's really interesting. I was talking to my therapist about this one time, and she's like, you should publish that notepad. Because I would go and I would even have notes like, they just said this in their last annual report. Don't bring this up.
Look at you. See, you're so good. That's awesome.
But
I love
like,
that.
you have to treat it like a job. Like,
Yeah.
it has to be something that you focus on and that you're executing against, and that you know when to go full force
Yeah.
and when to step away. Because I think you could really go down a rabbit hole in
You
this.
just segued into the next part, which is the mental health side of the job search, right? In addition to the mental anguish, the financial concern, right? Just the gut punch, I would say is probably the best way to describe it,
Yeah.
of maybe being part of a riff or some sort of a layoff. Um, when you're actually in the process of applying for a job, I think there is such a thing as rejection fatigue. Um,
The rejection is so hard.
yeah, it's hard.
As someone who's been in sales, you get used to rejection. And I think it's fine because you're like, well, they're rejecting like my sales pitch. You get rejected from an interview, you're like, you're
They were just
rejecting
me.
me.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
this hits really hard. I
Yeah.
mean, even like the strongest, most confident people, it hurts.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, it's funny because well-intended people are like, don't take it personally, but the reality is
It's
that it is
personal. My
personal,
job search
right?
is
Yeah.
personal.
Especially if I think you have a
Mhm.
family, whatever size of, family that is, or you're not necessarily living at home or anything like
Or
that, and
if
you're
you
on your
bought a
own,
house.
or you're a
Yeah,
recent
like,
homeowner, or you
yeah,
recently
or you have a
moved,
car. Yeah,
or
it's like
whatever it
all
is,
these
like,
reasons why I need money, and now I'm gonna freak out.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think another one that's really important, and you talked about this a little bit, but so much of our identity is tied to our career.
Yeah.
And so when you're going through this process and, you talked about when you had your first layoff, like no one could tell you that you weren't like
No, I was the best.
what does my mom say it? La última Coca-Cola del desierto, right? It's like you're the best thing, since sliced bread.
So to get riffed, you're just like, what?
Yeah, absolutely. But
I'm like,
so much of your identity is tied to your career.
yeah.
And I think, that part to the discussion we were having earlier is not, I think, unique to the United States, but I do think that there is something different. Like I remember when I would lived in Japan, like most people started out with more just like conversations and then they worked to figure out sort of what you were and who or what you do, kind of stuff like
Hmm.
that. But here it's like, oh, hey Nayeli, what do you do?
Yeah.
It's like almost, it's like it's a 1-2, right? And you're like,
Yep.
oh well, I just recently got laid off, or I've been laid off for a year now. It's like,
Well,
what's wrong with Nayeli that she's taking a
yeah.
job in a
Like,
year? But
it is really, you know what? I was talking to a close friend, and she was saying, she's like, I have been riffed 3 years in a row. And she's like, I get a new job and then it goes away. and she was talking about just like the anguish and how like, and she was like, I don't even want to date anybody.
You lose your sense of control. You lose your sense of you can't be grounded in that
Yeah.
environment. I mean, just think about
Well,
it.
you lose your
Yeah,
routine.
well, that's
You
yeah,
lose your
loss of
like
routine.
how can I like I'm a 9 to 5er. This is what I do. I go into work and I like the commute, and on the train I listen to my podcast or my book, or I do this, and it's like now I'm waking up late, or I don't have
Right,
the energy to push myself
right.
to do some of
You're
these
in your
other things.
feelings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
you're just not.
it's hard. And so
Yeah.
I would say one, if you do find yourself needing mental health, please make sure that you get mental help because it
Yes,
is very important, and it just we need you to be okay.
I completely agree.
And secondly is like have very physical cues of when you're on and when you're off.
Yeah,
You know,
and know when to also tell people when you're on or when you're off. I remember when I was impacted, like I had to go through that process myself to just be like, hey, I'm not having a good day today. And that doesn't mean that I need you to activate and I need you to make it better for me. It
mhm,
just means that I'm in my feelings today and this is how I'm going to show
yeah,
up, and don't take it personally. Like this is not, whatever, but you have to have your own cues and you
you
also, I
do.
think, have a responsibility or even a slight responsibility to communicate that
You
to
know,
the
Reina,
people around you.
Reina, when she was, she w- works from home, but she would always say, I have a cup. When I flip the cup upside down, I can't go near my desk because that
Mm,
means I'm done. And so I was like, that is such a good idea to have a visible cue of like, I'm working, I'm not
I
working. I'm
like
looking
that.
for a job, I'm not looking for
I
a
like
job.
that.
Because you need to be like, nope, resist,
Yeah.
resist, resist. Because if not, you could spend all day looking for a job. You could spend all day on the boards. You could spend all of these. And then the reality is like, your hours when you're most effective. For me, it's in
Yeah.
the morning. For other people, it's in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Some people are night owls and they operate the best then. So it's like those are the hours you need to put aside for your job
I agree with
search.
you. For me, it was closing the office door, like at
Mhm.
home. It was like, once that door closes, that means I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
stepping away, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to reopen it again unless I need something from there. But
Mhm.
otherwise, like, this is it. And
Yeah.
so I
See you
agree with
tomorrow.
you. I think there
Yeah.
is something to that. So let's talk about like practical things to do, right? We talked about obviously the importance of mental health. We talked about the importance of, um, you know, working with others around you, kind of letting people know sort of in your life, where you are on a particular day. I will say, having gone through this also, like, no 2 days are the same, and
Mhm.
some days you wake up feeling amazing and some days you're just totally down. And it's important for people to at least have a sense so that they can know how to show up or maybe say, or maybe even give them an opportunity to say, do you need anything from me?
Mhm.
Is there anything I can do? No, I don't need you to fix anything. I don't need you to do anything.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, you know what? I need you to listen. That's all I need for you. That's all I need from you today. And that's it, right? But you mentioned something earlier. I loved your notebook idea. Because one of the things that I think has been helpful is to sort of treat this as a project, right?
Mhm.
So, in your case, you had kind of the company information. I mean, that's amazing, by the way, in the year 2000,
I know.
before like a lot of
I
this
would read
technology
the
was.
annual reports.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays you could literally just go on AI,
Yeah.
any AI tool and be like, "Hey, like I'm applying for this job, I'm interviewing for this. What's one or two things from the latest earnings that I should
Mhm.
maybe bring up in the conversation, or what should I absolutely stay away from?" So there's obviously a lot to do there, but doing things like creating a weekly plan. We've talked about this a lot, but networking is so incredibly important.
Networking is how the majority of jobs are given out. It's how the majority of interviews are gotten. Networking will open doors. You work your network when you don't need your network. You
Absolutely.
nurture the network. Going to networking events and just building community, being around people that believe what you believe, that
Mm-hmm.
like what you like,
Mm-hmm. I believe in you.
volunteering.
Yep.
Um, to me, I feel like my network is one. Now I feel like my network is all friends because I've been networking for so long that I've seen the same people forever. So now it's warm. It's
Yeah.
it's not it's not a job.
It's not an exchange.
Um,
It's not like you're.
Yeah, and
It's a
I
warm exchange.
yes,
Yeah.
and I have different networks based on what I need that network for me, like, to
Mm-hmm.
do for me. Some of them are showing up and cheering others on. Other times it's learning about, like, entrepreneur and small business things. Other times it's, skill set development or chambers. So I think that you need to know what your network is for and why you're networking, but you should always be networking.
Yeah, I agree. I think the point in look up one of our conversations with Jaime Viteri. Just reminds me of just the whole discussion that we had about like doing that pre-networking. Because if you also just go to people whenever you need something, that
Yeah,
that
it's
doesn't
not well
necessarily
received.
well
Yeah.
received. But when you're thinking about the, just even from a practical perspective, for me, what was helpful is to have what I would call a networking day and an application day, and then like a skills development day. So like I broke it down, and maybe one day I did all three, but for the
Hmm.
most part I had already at least scheduled it.
Right.
And there's an intentionality there behind doing that. So then that way I don't feel like I have to do everything, because there were times where I woke up and I was like, how do I attack this? And just even thinking about it was became overwhelming. And so if you, just like anything else, if you schedule your dentist appointment, if you schedule your kid's soccer practice,
Mhm.
if you schedule whatever it is, think about breaking down some of those very specific job search things into chunks within your
Yeah.
day or days to help you feel, I think, more accomplished. And I'm a checklist person. So I love a good checklist. So at least for me, like it helps out a lot when I know that I've completed that.
I would say the other thing is, in terms of checklists and networking and whatnot, I would say um, reach out to others consistently. Follow up on the people you reach out to, follow up with the people you interviewed with, follow up with the people that you go and meet at networking events.
Yes.
Because you know what? If I've gone to many networking events and we just exchange cards and then there's nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
So, when you're building this network that, at one day you might catch someone or they might catch you, depending on who needs the help that day. Um, Make sure you follow up and that you stay connected. To
Yeah.
me, that's the hardest part is getting messages where it's like, "Hey, I need your help," and I'm like, "Where do I know this person
Right.
from?"
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So also, if you meet someone and then you see them again and they forget your name, just I always reintroduce myself. I always say my name first, so in case that person doesn't remember it.
Yeah.
Because one, I don't want them to feel awkward and I don't want them to avoid me because they don't know my
Yeah.
name.
Yeah. And it's easy. I mean, and we're
Yeah.
all going a million miles a second. So
Mhm.
it's absolutely, I think that's actually
Yeah.
a really good piece of advice. And I would say the last thing is just protect your energy.
Oh yeah.
I know it sounds simple, but like one of the things that was helpful for me was starting off with a morning meditation, or even an evening meditation, and what that did is it just gave me 10 minutes of the day to just focus on introspection or block out the world, or I would go to yoga, and you know and other than the instruction, it was just the music and the yoga poses, and it was nice because I didn't have to worry. I would turn my phone on, do not disturb, and that was it. Like that was just my space.
Mhm.
I talked about this a little bit earlier, but talking to your friends and family members, your close circle, letting them know, hey, I'm just not doing well. I mean, there have been times where you've reached out to me and I said, hey girl,
Yeah,
I'm
not
not doing
today.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not
And
okay.
I'm like, "What can I do? I'll jump
Right.
in." Like,
Yeah.
where do you want me?
And but
Like,
you
yeah.
ask, at least you're
Yeah.
like, hey, like I think your question is always like, is there anything I can do?
Yeah.
And I think to me, just even hearing that, even if there isn't anything that you can do in that moment, there's something beautiful about like someone just taking that moment. And part of that for me, it refreshes, it like helps me protect my energy,
Mm.
right? And so, no, truly. And so, if you have an Ayeli or anyone else, like definitely, like I said, bring them in, because sometimes I think people don't know any better, and they're just doing what they think what they think is
Right.
best, and it may not be necessarily what's best for you in terms of protecting your energy.
And I would say if you have a job and your friends don't, check on them.
Yeah.
Like check on them and, open doors for them. See
Mm-hmm.
where you can help them out or help them into. Because oftentimes, what we do is if we know someone doesn't have a job, we don't want to make them uncomfortable by asking them,
Mm-hmm.
but follow up and say, like, where can I help you? Who can I introduce you to?
Right.
Who, like, what do you need? Send me your resume.
Right.
And is there anyone, like, go through my LinkedIn? Is there anyone here that I can
Right.
make the
Introduce. Yeah,
introduction
absolutely.
for?
Yeah.
Because it is our job to take care of each other. And
Yeah.
it is our job to, make sure we can all provide for our families. And that's what community is. And that's what our culture is based on.
Love it. I think good time for closing,
Yes.
for closing reflection. Um, don't forget that although the job market may be tough, and again, it sort of goes in, peaks and valleys, your value hasn't changed. Your value doesn't change.
Mm-mm.
In some cases, and you talked about this a little bit earlier, it may be a good opportunity to pivot. It may represent an opportunity for you to do things a little bit differently, but you know, I'm not going to tell you not to take it personally because I think that's
It
just a
is
natural
personal.
thing. But at the end of the day, just remember that your value as a human, your value as someone who can contribute has not changed.
No, you are you.
Awesome.
So,
Well, gracias por estar con nosotros. I'm Carlos Butler Vale.
y yo soy Nayeli Suarez Guest.
Hasta
Bye.
pronto.